This is the Devil's Guide to D&D. Devil's Delegate here, back from my second review and overview of the subclasses in the revised Matt Mercer Critical Role book, Tal'Dorei Reborn. If you missed the first, take the link that's hopefully showing above, where I covered the Blood Domain Cleric and why the Tal'Dorei subclasses count. I thought I'd continue with the Clerics today, bringing me to the Blood Domain, which is not a brand new subclass, but has been greatly updated. So, is it any good? And do you want it at your table? Now, Hemocraft, or blood magic, is an integral part of the Critical Role world, where members of the Cleric Order, including blood hunters, wander about Wildmount. And I like the idea. I designed something similar for my 4E campaign. Now, blood magic will appear again in a wizard subclass. For this cleric, I like the feel, though blood magic does seem more suitable for a wizard. But it's mechanics that matter most, as we can fill in our own themes. So what do we have? Well, as always for a cleric, it starts with domain spells. Remember, as a cleric, we get these automatically prepared at the appropriate levels. And this is a pretty good list. Hold person, dominate person, hold monster. I prefer on casters that can debuff enemy saving throws, like Eloquence Bards or Shadow Sorcerers with the Hound, but it's nice to have in your back pocket. Haste and Slow are pretty good third level spells. Slow isn't in the same league for control as Hypnotic Pattern that the Moon Cleric just got, but if the enemy is already mixed up with your allies, this is a nice non-friendly fire control spell. Haste is a powerful buff, though I feel it's overpraised. I like it here because a cleric is less likely to fail the con saves than a wizard, assuming the cleric is staying out of melee, as dropping haste in the middle of combat is very bad. Plus the wizard has more battlefield encompassing spells to be using his concentration on, whereas for the cleric it gives it another choice between Bless and Spirit Guardians. The key to using haste for a cleric is to cast on somebody else and to stay way out of melee. Okay, False Life is fine, but I'm even less impressed with Stone Skin, which consumes an expensive component and is rarely going to be a good choice for your concentration. If you want a buff, use Bless. And the two necromancy damage spells are bad. Ray of Enfeeblement is weak, but Blight is just a rotten spell. The damage is too low for the level, and it goes against con saves. But it's pretty good against plants. It's kinda off-brand. The Cleric of Blood Magic is getting a spell that's main use is against shrubs. And finally Sleep, which is a real standout, both because it is one of the best first level spells in the game that can decide or avoid entire battles, at least at levels 1 and 2, but also because, well, I'll get to that in a moment. Next we get some bonus proficiencies. You get martial weapons. No armor, so and already determined I probably want to stay out of melee. Well, when I get martial weapons without an upgrade in armor, what that really means to me is heavy crossbows or hand crossbows. I'll take it. Okay, our big first level feature is Bloodletting Focus. Kinda wish they hadn't used the word focus since that term has other uses in 5e, but okay. This gives you some extra damage on your spells of first level or above. Pointing you towards spells now instead of weapons. It specifies that it needs to be on spells whose duration is instantaneous, and I can understand why they did that, ruling out concentration ones, because the added damage with Spirit Guardians would be obscene. But a bonus of 3 or more per target is pretty good, right? No. Firstly, be suspicious of any spell damage bonus that doesn't include cantrips, as you're not going to be getting to use it very often. But here's the big question for those designing this. Did anyone count how many instantaneous damage spells there are on the cleric's list? I did. There's 5. How many at first level? 1. Inflict Wounds. Yeah, Guiding Bolt isn't instantaneous. Who'd have thought it? So, Inflict Wounds. Well, at least Inflict Wounds isn't a bad spell, but it is a touch spell. And it's very likely not a spell that you really want to be using. Okay, but how about what we get at second level? Nothing. There are no instantaneous damage spells at second level. And at third level? Nothing. Well, that's not technically true. There's life transference, but you see, that damages you when you heal somebody else. So this feature actually will increase the damage on you if you use the spell. So you're not going to be using that spell. What about 4th level? Well, there's Blight from your domain list. Of course, Blight is still a terrible spell with this, unless of course you're going after some mad flowers, in which case this doesn't apply because they don't have blood. And then finally at 5th you get Flame Strike, which is instantaneous, and an area of effect. So suddenly this feature could do up to 84 extra damage. Okay, it's unlikely you'll have that many targets, but it's possible. And then this feature can literally do hundreds more damage at 7th level with Firestorm. So it's next to useless when you get it, and then at 9th, you become the best blaster in the game. Of note, Matt Mercer answered a question on Twitter saying that while it's up to you, he'd allow the damage bonus for each swing of spiritual weapon, in which case maybe the feature should say that instead of specifically saying the opposite. That just makes this more of a mess when the designer contradicts himself. Of course it's up to the DM. It's always up to the DM, but we need balanced, concrete rules to make those decisions. If spiritual weapon, how about spirit guardians? Which way is this balanced? That only instantaneous spells caveat was added for some reason. This whole thing is a design failure. But okay, let's move on to 2nd level. When we get Channel Divinity, Crimson Bond. Using this, you can form a bond with a creature that you either see or you have a blood sample. It doesn't specify what constitutes a blood sample. The original version of this feature did, specifying it as 2 ounces or more. You know, if you can get 2 ounces or more of an enemy's blood, you're probably past the point of making bonds. But okay, once the bond is in place, if the target is within 10 miles of you, you can use an action to determine its distance or direction from you, hit points, and any conditions, which might be useful. Hey, at 17th level, this would give the party wizard a reason for picking up Power Word Kill. Or you can also use an action to take damage yourself to give it a con save to stop you from seeing or hearing through its senses for a few minutes, and then the bond ends. Okay, I love the theoretical roleplay possibilities. Theoretical. But as far as actual power goes, no. In 90% of all games, nothing here is going to matter or even come up. And really nothing at 2nd level. If you're doing this kind of investigation, it's going to be at a slightly higher level. And it uses your concentration and only lasts an hour. Was concentration really necessary here? Was there a fear a cleric would ever do this in combat instead of bless? The only guaranteed use of this is to keep track of party members, and then the hour is too short. At its best, it is super situational, which isn't what you want in a subclass Channel Divinity. It should be something useful every day because your class Channel Divinity is already situational. Not nearly as situational as this, however, and this will rarely be useful even in very social campaigns. This is a great ribbon feature. As long as you're given something else that's constantly useful along with it, this is wonderful. But we're not given something else that's useful. This is it. This is our Channel Divinity. And this is why I was mentioning that sleep is really the standout, because for your first couple levels in this subclass, sleep is it. That's all you're getting. Well, do things improve once we get to 6th level? Well, that's where we get the very wordy Channel Divinity Blood Puppet. This lets you attempt to take control of a creature or corpse. If it's conscious, it gets a wisdom save. There's lots of caveats. They must have blood, can't be immune to charm, living creatures get new saves every round, it takes your concentration, and it lasts a max of 1 minute. If you get control, you can command it as a free action to move, interact with an object, make a single attack, or do nothing. And yeah, I love this. The saves put it in line with other monster control spells, so this is good to use on your enemy, but not too good. And I like when that isn't going to work, targeting an enemy, you have a sure thing with a corpse. This is useful out of combat. Since clerics don't get Unseen Servant, you now get your own corpse servant. This is fun, flavorful, and useful. And we get another feature at 6, so I would expect that feature to be a ribbon, because we've already gotten a pretty decent one here. So what is that ribbon feature? It's Sanguine Recall, where you can recover spell slots by taking 1d8 damage per spell slot level up to 6th level spells. Well, nice to get a new way to replace spell slots, since up to this point, you've been using your Harness Divine Power to trade away your useless Channel Divinity for spell slots. Though this feels a bit like overkill. That's a lot of spell slots for a pretty low price. Just means this cleric is going to care about short rests. Do this, and thus gain substantial power, then take a short rest and spend some hit dice to heal up again. I might have made this proficiency level instead of half cleric level to keep it a bit more under control at high levels, but okay. This is good, real good. So essentially nothing from first level to 6th, and then this subclass explodes. Well, continuing with the features, at 8th level you get Divine Strike. Pretty standard, we're back to weapons again. This subclass is really confused on whether you're supposed to be a frontliner with weapons, one with spells, or a backliner with spells or weapons. But this is fine. And finally, at 17th, we get Vascular Corruption Aura. For 1 minute, this gives you a 30-foot aura where any hostile creatures take 3d6 necrotic damage. It also adds in a debuff for them regaining hit points. And you can use this once per long rest. Okay, the area of 30 feet is pretty good. 3d6 necrotic damage, not so much. This is 17th level. At this point, you can cast Spirit Guardians, giving you an aura of 15 feet for 10 minutes that'll do 9d8 damage, with a more frequently useful debuff. And then you could cast it again, doing 8d8 damage. Yes, this has a larger aura, but that's not enough. But my real problem with this feature isn't that it's too weak, though it is too weak, but rather it's too much like what you've already got. You've already got a damaging aura at this level. What I'd really like is something different. But it's 17th level, it's not a big deal. So okay, would I allow this subclass into my game? No, not as it is. It's underpowered at low levels and overpowered at the mid levels. I could live with the overpowered, although I don't like it, but the underpowered would make this boring to play. The funny thing is, the fix for this is pretty simple. Do 2 things. 1, swap your channel divinities. Blood Puppet for Crimson Bond. Blood Puppet would be a pretty strong channel divinity for 2nd level, but not too strong because of those caveats, and it would be fun to play. And Crimson Bond can be a fine ribbon feature up at 6th. The other thing to do is change the wording of the Bloodletting Focus so that it is in line with similar features in other subclasses of other classes. Get rid of the added instantaneous duration requirement and replace it with the ability to do this extra damage once per turn to 1 creature. Then you could put this on your spiritual weapon, and this would be a useful feature starting at low levels, and then at high levels it wouldn't be ridiculously overpowered. Now for me, I'd also want to rein in Sanguine Recall, putting more significant restraints on the spell levels, plus raising the damage a touch. Though you could probably get by with it as is, it's just a little bit too strong. So okay, so far, 1 hit and 1 miss, although this is salvageable if you want to do a little bit of homebrewing on it. I'll be back with the next one soon, and that's it for now. Sit back, relax, and enjoy that thick chocolate cake covered in cocaine.